Hello, wonderhussie here, walking right down the middle of the old Spanish Trail. That's right, I live right off of the famous historic route known as the Old Spanish Trail. It was pioneered by the Spaniards way back in, 1840 or something, as a means of getting from Santa Fe to Los Angeles. I think they were trading horses from LA for textiles woven by the Navajo out in New Mexico. And so it was a trade route, originally pioneered by the Spaniards, but then eventually adopted by all them white folk migrating westward. Anyway, this highway was eventually laid out and paved more or less along the exact route all those generations of travelers took on their way to Los Angeles. It cuts right across the Mojave Desert through one of the most arid regions of the Mojave Desert, right here outside Death Valley. And so, as you can imagine, anyone traveling a route like that would have had to plan very carefully where they were getting their next water supply. Okay, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you might remember a few years ago, I did a video where I walked all the way down the Old Spanish Trail from the last watering hole, which is down towards Highway 160, called Stump Spring. And let me tell you, well, there's nothing left of it today, but even back then, there wasn't much to speak of. I think if you dug a hole in the ground, you might be able to get like a cup full of some kind of murky water, but it was enough to keep you going. It was enough to be life-sustaining for you and your animals. And so folks did stop and rest at Stump Spring before continuing on, I think, 24 miles to the next oasis, which was a doozy. Okay, you can probably tell by all the greenery and bushes around me that we are near some kind of oasis, and that oasis is called the Resting Springs Ranch. And this is where I ended my 24-mile hike in that video I was just talking about. Basically, the idea in that video was I was going to do one day's travel on the Old Spanish Trail, and since each day they traveled from water source to water source, that was a particularly long day, 24 miles. I mean, for me, I was on foot and I had a backpack with snacks and my drone and stuff, but for the travelers on the trail, it would have been even harder because they were carrying all their supplies for this entire 3, 4, 5-month journey. And so arriving at this Resting Springs Ranch would have been a real godsend because apparently it's a pretty significant oasis with good, clean drinking water, which is in short supply in this neck of the woods, which I don't need to tell anyone who's ever been to Death Valley. I mean, if you've gone out there, you've seen for yourself. There's not much water there anywhere. In fact, we can't even drink the water here in Tecopa where I live. My sister and I have 2 wells on our property, and neither one of them is potable water. There's really, really high levels of arsenic and borates, which, okay, granted, if you're traveling along the trail and you're dying of thirst, you're not going to let a little arsenic stop you from quenching that thirst. And so travelers they would stop at, there's a few little stinking springs in this area, and I think one of them even was called Stinking Springs because it's nasty water. I mean, the river that runs through here is called Amargosa. The Spanish named it the Amargosa River because that means bitter water. So that should tell you right there, it's not very good to drink. It'll get you through a day or 2, a week. It'll save your life, but it's not good to drink in the long run. Well, apparently the water here at Resting Spring is actually good potable drinking water. At least that's what I read online. Unfortunately, I cannot confirm that for myself because Resting Springs Ranch is unfortunately private property, and that means no trespassing. And I'm a very respectful person when it comes to property rights. I learned that the hard way. So I'm not going to be trespassing on Resting Springs today, even though, oh my God, I am so curious what it looks like in there. I mean, even from out here on the road, you can see there's an incredible amount of greenery back there. Yeah, there's all this mesquite, these mesquite bosks that are naturally occurring, but Beyond that, it looks like there's a bunch of palm trees, some kind of other trees. There's probably a nice green grassy lawn. In fact, I've heard from people who've lived out here for a long time that it's an absolute paradise out there. It's a true oasis in the literal sense of the word. Apparently there's this really cool swimming hole, like a big pond you can swim in, and it's shady and cool and green. And well, golly, you're probably wondering why a historic place like this isn't a museum. I mean, there should at least be an interpretive center here. We are right at the side of the old Spanish Trail, which, as you can see, people are still traveling to this day, myself included. That's the way I drive every time I go into Vegas to go see the doctor or the dentist or go to Trader Joe's. And it's kind of surreal because that's the exact same route all these travelers have been taking since the 1840s. I mean, Kit Carson and John C. Fremont both traveled this route, and I'm pretty sure both of them stayed right here at Resting Springs. Only back then, I think it was originally called Archulette Springs, but then Kit Carson and John C. Fremont were traveling through here, I should say. Nobody in their right mind would have come out here back in the day. Okay, nowadays that we have air conditioning and modern conveniences, stupid people can choose to come live out here, and I say that fondly as one of those stupid people, but really this landscape is not meant for human habitation. Okay, so back in the days of John C. Fremont and Kit Carson, no one in their right mind would have moved out here. In fact, the only people who did end up moving out here back then were miners, and as we all know, miners are not in their right minds or minds because they're possessed by gold fever. Anyway, John C. Fremont and Kit Carson, I think together, were traveling through this region when they came upon, or they camped out somewhere, and some kid came up to their camp saying that a group of Indians, Native Americans, had attacked them and killed half of their party, and he was looking for help to go avenge the deaths. And so they did. John C. Fremont and Kit Carson saddled up and went and had this big gnarly Indian battle, I think back over yonder, down by the present day China Ranch Date Farm, which is somewhere back over that way, just behind these adventure motorcyclists. Boy, I'm telling you, the old Spanish Trail is even busier in 2026 than it was in 1856, and that's no exaggeration. Anyway, yeah, China Ranch Date Farm, you go out there, you get a nice delicious date shake, you go for a hike, a walk in those beautiful canyons. Apparently it was the scene of this terrible Indian skirmish, or Native American skirmish, with John C. Fremont and Kit Carson. But anyway, after all of that ended, they came back here to Resting Spring, I'm pretty sure, which was, in those days, I think it was called Archulette Spring. But after this battle, John C. Fremont renamed it Agua de Hernandez, I think, because Hernandez was the name of the family that was killed by the Native Americans. I'm not exactly sure on all the historical details. I mean, the record is a little bit fuzzy, and that's part of what's so frustrating about this place is we don't know exactly for sure where John C. Fremont and Kit Carson camped. They said they camped by stinking springs with bad water. Well, that could have been any number of places out here. But I think most historians generally agree that it was probably Resting Springs, which is still here to this day, unfortunately, privately owned, apparently by someone who isn't really that interested in history. Okay, I think a guy named Dr. Harry Godshall owned this place. I guess he inherited 1/20th of it. It's like 520 acres. It's a huge property with this magnificent natural spring that puts out something like 1 million gallons a day. Yeah, I just had to look at my notes, and that's what my online research indicated. Somebody wrote a blog 27 years ago or something like that, saying this place puts out 1 million gallons a day of good, clean drinking water. So it's an unbelievable property, and it really sucks that it's just sitting here going to waste. Well, I mean, it's not going to waste. So this guy, Dr. Harry Godshall, inherited 1/20th of it from his grandpa when his grandpa passed away. And so I guess Dr. Godshall was kind of a history-minded guy, and he went, well, I only inherited 1/20th of this thing. I'm going to try to get the other 19/20ths. And so he did. He went around, he tracked down all the other 19 people that owned an interest in this and bought them all out, I'm pretty sure. And so he owned this property 100% totally free and clear. 520 acres, I think it is, with this amazing spring and this beautiful pond. And apparently he came out here in 1981 and it was all overgrown. You know, you can imagine with that much water and as many mesquite thickets as there are around here. And by the way, if you've ever tangled with a mesquite tree, you know they're no joke. They've got thorns on them that'll go right through your pants. And ooh, they are bad hombres. Anyway, I don't know if him and his wife came out here and cleaned up the property, planted all those beautiful palm trees that you can see there behind me today. And I think a lot of the greenery out there is because of this Dr. Harry Godshall. And apparently he took really good care of the place, and he was, I mean, history minded. I think he respected the history of this place. And if you were trying to walk the entire Old Spanish Trail, as sometimes people do, you could camp out overnight here. And it was just kind of like a known stop on the Old Spanish Trail. Believe it or not, there are people who either walk the entire Old Spanish Trail on foot or by horseback. I think I watched a YouTube video about this guy who rode his horse all the way from Santa Fe to Los Angeles. I mean, a lot of the trail just goes through open desert. I've been to parts of the Old Spanish Trail in Utah, and it's, you know, it's BLM land, it's open desert, it's pretty easy. Now, once you get through Death Valley and into the LA basin, well, you're going to have a harder time finding places to camp. But this guy apparently did it, and he did. He camped out right here at Resting Springs Ranch, and oh my God, it looked amazing, and I'm dying to get a peek at it. But like I said, I'm respectful of property rights, and I'm not going to trespass. But if anyone from the Godshall family happens to be watching this video and wants to give me a tour, give us a tour, get a hold of me. I would definitely be interested. Okay, I think unfortunately Dr. Harry Godshall passed away 10, 15, 20 years ago before I moved out here. And I think the property went to his son. Online it says it's owned by Godshall, the Godshall Trust LLC, something like that. So I think I heard around town that his son now owns the property, and I guess maybe the son just isn't into history, or the son has the sense to stay the heck out of Death friggin' Valley and never really comes out here. I think there's a caretaker who stays out here looking after it. I'm pretty sure, well, before I moved out here, I met a guy who was caretaking it, and I haven't seen that guy since. I don't know, maybe there is no caretaker now. Either way, I'm sure there's cameras and some kind of alarm system, and I have morals and ethics, so I'm not going to trespass. What made me curious about this place and why I'm over here in the first place, you know, I've lived out here 5 years, and I've been curious about this place the entire 5 years, but I've never really made a video here other than that walk I did where I ended up here. Remember in that video, at the end of a very long 24-mile walk, my sister picked me up right here at this sign. Well, what made me curious to come back and do this video now is I happened to be driving to Vegas the other day. Remember I said this is the road I take to Vegas. And on my way, I noticed somebody had put up some signs covering up the Resting Springs sign. Okay, you can see somebody tacked up a little piece of cloth that says, "Love thy neighbor," right on top of the Resting Springs Ranch sign. And it actually kind of looks like they peeled off some of the letters too. Like this used to say Old Spanish Trail, and it's, oh, maybe they just flaked off naturally. No, look, there's the A down here on the ground. It's almost like somebody purposely vandalized the sign. Who would do something like this? This is a bona fide mystery, y'all. This is what brought me, I'll be honest, I was sitting at home. That's why I look so ratty. I was sitting at home editing another video that I'm working on. And so, you know, I didn't want to put makeup on anything, but I was so curious about this. I had to come out here and investigate. You can see on the other side of the sign, yeah, it should say 5000 Old Spanish Trail Highway. I don't know, maybe this side of the sign is just in better shape because it's the east side of the sign. It doesn't get as much sun. And this side is the west, and so it bears the full brunt of the sun all day, and so it's just more damage. But this A fell off in one whole piece, and it was just sitting there. It doesn't look like it's been there very long. I don't know. Color me suspicious. And then look here, next to the A, there's another one of the letters or part of it that it looks like it was peeled off. I think somebody purposely vandalized this sign, and whoever that was is the same person who stuck this. It looks like it's a piece of an old sheet, an old bed sheet. It says, "Love thy neighbor." And unfortunately, I didn't make it out here as early as I wanted to because it's been real windy the last couple days, and I want to fly my drone. But if I would have gotten out here sooner, because I drove to Vegas. Today I'm shooting this on Thursday. I think I drove to Vegas on Saturday, last Saturday. There was another banner right here that I just saw out of the corner of my eye. I was blazing along this highway, and I'm not going to tell you how fast I was going. I'll just say I was going much faster than the Spaniards would have gone when they took the trail. Anyway, I was blazing along the road to Vegas, probably late as usual, on last Saturday, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw there was like a banner that said something, and then I saw that "Love thy neighbor." And so I asked my sister if she knew anything about it, and she said, "Oh yeah, I did see that." And it said something, she said the other banner said something like, "Eat the rich" or "tax the rich." And in my memory, the other banner was just sort of somewhere right here, kind of like stuck up in the grass in front of the "Love thy neighbor" sign. I don't see any trace of another banner now. So it has been really windy the last couple days. So maybe the wind blew it away, or maybe somebody came out here and removed it. I don't know. And I may never know, but I'm really curious what this means. I mean, if I could see the other banner in person and see if it really did say "Eat the rich" or "Tax the rich," then I would be more confident of my theory that it's some kind of anti-private property statement. I don't know. Maybe it's somebody who's really into history and is pissed off by the fact that they can't get out here to this badass historic watering hole because some dentist's son in Southern California owns it but doesn't want to have anything to do with it. I mean, something about the way it says "Love thy neighbor" and is tacked up right over the sign seems a little bit passive aggressive to me. I mean, I don't know. Am I reading too much into it? And also, if the heirs of Dr. Godshall happen to be watching this video, are you even aware that this is going on? I mean, somebody came up here and stapled this to your sign, and your sign is in pretty rough shape. So I don't know, you might want to come out here and do something about it. Or maybe the caretaker just didn't notice. So if the caretaker happens to be watching this video, hey man, come check out your sign. I don't know. It's just one of those things that makes me really curious. And even though I might not ever know the answer to it, I can slake my curiosity in another way. Okay, like I said, this is all private property, all 520 acres or whatever it is. But I have the Onyx off-roading app, which shows you where private property boundaries end. And so I downloaded the map of this area, and so I'm going to drive over to the very edge of the property line so that I'm not trespassing. I'm just going to fly my drone up in the air and see if we can see anything at all of how cool this ranch is. Now, I'm not sure how the legalities with drones work. If you're allowed to fly, I mean, because I could just go outside the property boundary and fly my drone however many feet above the property and spy on it, but I don't want to be a bad neighbor. I don't want to antagonize anyone. I don't want to piss anybody off. I'm just curious. So I'm going to go a respectful distance away, and it's not going to be very exciting drone footage because unfortunately I'm an ethical person, and I'm sorry for you watching this YouTube channel. If I was a less ethical person, then gosh, I'd get like a coyote cam. I'd get a little game camera or something, strap it on a coyote's neck and set him running around in here. You know, nobody's keeping the coyotes out. But as things stand, I am a respectful, ethical person. So I'm just gonna drive. Okay, we're here outside the very edge of the Resting Springs LLC boundary. That's what it is. I just looked at Onyx. It's called the Resting Springs LLC, not the Godshall Family Trust. It's an LLC, Resting Springs. And I'm going to park over here at the side of the highway and just walk over as close as I can without trespassing. And God bless Onyx Off-Road, who I should note I am in no way sponsored by. I just happen to download the app earlier this year because people have been telling me for a long time, oh, wonderhussie, you should get this onX app. It shows you where private property boundaries are. And I never really thought it would be that useful until now. Okay, onX very clearly shows that we are on BLM land, which is public land that I have every right to be on. As a matter of fact, you can see here, I think that's the property boundary marker for the private property of the ranch. So it's totally clear. I'm on the right side of the law. I'm not trying to break any rules or piss anybody off. I just want to get a peek at this dang oasis. I mean, you can see here on the onX app that I am just outside the property boundary. I'm just sort of making my way to a spot where I can get a good view at the sweet, sweet, juicy desert oasis. Oh my God. I don't know why. I guess it's one of those things like when it's off limits, it makes you even more curious, but I don't know. You've probably seen my videos before. I'm just curious about weird stuff in the middle of nowhere. And if a giant paradisical oasis in the middle of the desert doesn't qualify as weird, then I don't know what does. And ranch or no ranch, this is just some really interesting terrain. Look at that. It's like badlands. All these badlands. Oh, look, there's another property marker, boundary marker down there in that wash. All these badlands were crisscrossed by generations of travelers on the old Spanish Trail. I mean, there's no telling what kinds of cool artifacts you might find if you wandered around down in there, or if you're brave enough to hack your way into that mesquite thicket. There's probably all kinds of cool stuff. Old horseshoes, rusty old nails, old tin cups, old whiskey bottles. I mean, I think the old Spanish Trail was first laid out or first pioneered by Father Antonio Armijo in like 1826, and I don't think it became like really commonly traveled until like the 1840s. But then it was used pretty regularly up until, gosh, I don't know, the late 1800s. So at least, I would say it saw at least 50 years of pretty heavy travel, and so there's bound to be some pretty cool stuff down in there. If not whiskey bottles, then at the very least, you know, old bits of horse tack, coins. Who knows? And pretty much ever since I moved out here, I've been meaning to come down here and hike around, poke around, explore around, just to see what I can see. And now that I have this onX map downloaded to very clearly show me where I can and cannot go, well, I'm gonna have to make a date to do that. Unfortunately, it's already getting so dang hot out here that I might not be able to really do a thorough exploration until the fall. I'm lucky we had a break in the weather. It rained the other night and temperature cooled down quite a bit, so it's not too bad right now. But unfortunately, I'm in the middle of editing this other video. I don't have time to go bushwhacking all around the badlands of Resting Spring. I don't know what these are called. The Amargosa Badlands. Whatever they're called, they're absolutely beautiful. In fact, I think I can walk right up to the edge of this ridge here, and that's pretty much the boundary between BLM and the Resting Springs LLC. So this is also a great overlook into these wild and mysterious badlands, but it's also a great overlook into the ranch itself. I mean, even without getting my drone out, if I just zoom in with my cell phone, you can see there's like a ranch house nestled in the trees. Oh, I think I read online that around 1850, the army built some kind of redoubt, and I'm not really sure what an army redoubt is. Is that like a fort? Some kind of little very rough fort out here to assist in beating back the Native Americans, who were understandably cheesed off at all these white folks crossing their land, killing their game, trampling their plants. You know, believe it or not, before the invention of air conditioning and cars that can go 95 miles an hour, there were people living out here. Okay, the Chemehuevi, the Paiute Shoshone, I think, lived in this area very peacefully for many hundreds of years, or I should say at least semi-peacefully for many hundreds of years. If you know anything about Native Americans, they weren't like these mythical, peaceful beings that some folks make them out to be. They had their own skirmishes, and they had their own slaves, and they stole each other's horses and women, and, you know, they had their issues just like we do. But, you know, they probably still weren't too enthused at the idea of all these clumsy white folks barreling through the desert. You know, say what you will about the Native Americans and their peacefulness, they did know how to, and they had adapted to this landscape. And so they knew how to survive off of, you know, eating these mesquite beans ground up into flour. And gosh, I don't know what they ate out here. It couldn't have been a very pleasant life, but they had figured it out. They knew to go up in the mountains in the summer and come down here to the hot springs in the winter. And you know, here comes the white man who was basically like a bull in a china shop, just coming through, cutting down every tree he came across to build his sawmills and campfires and, you know, pissing in the I mean, honestly, I did a whole series of videos about the Westward Pioneer Movement, the Donner Party. These immigrants, they didn't know any better. They'd piss in a stream, they'd poop in a stream, pollute the water sources. I mean, I don't even need to say how precious a resource water is out here without some German guy pissing in it. And I don't mean to pick on the Germans in particular, but the Germans do love the desert. In fact, I'm very surprised that a German doesn't own Resting Springs Ranch. I can see it being like a dude ranch for German tourists. You know, Germans love the desert and the Wild West. Hey, any Germans watching, you can vouch for this in the comments. Can you imagine if this was a German dude ranch and you could come stay out here? Oh, German or no, I would love to go stay at a dude ranch. I'd love to go stay at Resting Springs. I mean, I guess that's why I'm so fired up about all this. I think the Old Spanish Trail is a really interesting route. Especially because it's pretty well marked all along through Utah. You see monuments to it, and even here coming from Las Vegas, you know, Las Vegas means the meadows in Spanish, and it was a huge oasis on the Old Spanish Trail. And so even in Las Vegas, well, interestingly, there's a really fancy country club, very exclusive gated country club called, I think it's called Spanish Trail Estates or something, or Spanish Trail. And there's a park named after the Spanish Trail, and there's, when you're driving over the hump to Pahrump, there's signage at the top indicating that this was on that route. So it's a very well-marked route, and I feel like an interpretive center here at Resting Springs Ranch would bring some tourism in here. They're always banging on about tourism out here. In fact, the woman who owns Shoshone is very heavily campaigning to have this whole area made a national monument. Well, I can't think of anything to complement a national monument better than a Spanish Trail Interpretive Center at an historic old oasis. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything. I'm giving the folks at Xanterra Resorts ideas. And next thing you know, they're going to turn this into another fancy hotel just like the Oasis in Death Valley. If you've ever been to that fancy hotel in Furnace Creek, you know what I'm talking about. $400, $500, $600 a night. Whew, forget about it. Even if this was turned into a fancy hotel like that, though, I still would prefer that over it being completely locked up and inaccessible. Even if they want to charge $500 a night, I'm pretty sure I could scrounge up the funds somewhere to go stay there and poke around the grounds. So, gosh, I don't know. Anyway, it's so quiet out here that if there is a caretaker living over there, he can probably hear every word I'm saying, especially since I'm ranting and raving and yelling. And so I'd better fly my drone while I have the chance before they call the sheriff. Okay, I'm flying straight up in the air.
Max altitude reached.
I can't go any higher than this because I can't log into my dang account. Golly, can't really see anything. Okay, well, whether or not I'm an ethical person, I wasn't able to fly my drone far enough to spy on the actual ranch anyway, because inexplicably DJI makes you log into your account and you have to be on a network to log into your account to fly any significant distance. And since there's obviously no cell signal out here, I wasn't able to log into my account, which means I wasn't able to fly very far or very high. But you get the idea. It's a beautiful ranch. It's a beautiful oasis. I sure do hope they open it up to the public one of these days. But in the meantime, I'm very curious about who did this. Who hates Resting Springs? Do they hate Resting Springs? Or are the people who own Resting Springs just very religious, and well, it is Easter in a few days. So maybe they just put this up to remind everyone to love their neighbors. And now that I think about it, that message is needed more than ever in a place like Tacoma, where there has been sky-high record levels of fussing and feuding over the past year, and things seem to have reached a fever pitch in the last couple months. So maybe, just maybe, this sign appeared divinely. Maybe this was an act of divine intervention. God or one of the angels came down and put this soiled sheet up over the Resting Springs Ranch sign just to remind us all to love one another. Maybe there's a message in here for all of us, reminding us to be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.